Hello, everybody. Welcome to Coffee with Tamara. It is so incredibly good to see you all live on our YouTube channel. For those of you that watch Wednesdays, 10 a.m. Mountain Time, which is 12 p.m. Eastern Time. Uh, and it's so great to know that so many of you listen the next day on when we release it on the podcast players all over. So thank you. Thank you. You know, I do this because I love sharing the insights and the wisdom and the collective brilliance that I've learned from all of you over time. I think, oh, my mic's a little too far away. I think it is so important to share what I hear from you guys, and also to build on the 25 years of work that I've had and the experience that I've had, and to kind of share that out into the world. I believe very strongly that if we unlock 1 million everyday innovators into the world, we can change the game for a lot of us. So that's why I do it. So thank you for being a part of that. I appreciate all of you. So today's topic is all about how to become an everyday innovator. And before I dig into I actually have 7 steps and actually a bonus step. And I'm pretty sure number 4 is going to surprise you a little bit. It's not what you're going to expect me to say. And number 8 is going to make it all easy. So stay tuned for those. But before I do that, I just want to say a little something that's a little bit on my soapbox, but I feel very, very strongly about, which is that, you know, we talk about innovation, or I've seen other people try to use our phrase of everyday innovator, which is not only is it proprietary to us, but we're the only ones with a proprietary assessment that actually tells you how to be that, how your brain works in your way, how you be that high performing everyday innovator. So those people are all kind of false anyway. But what drives me crazy about them isn't just that they try to use the things that we built, but also that they try to make it sound like in order for you to be an everyday innovator, they make it sound like you have to go learn a new skill, or you have to be something that you are not. And what my 25 years of work and experience digging into the neuroscience, behavioral psychology, the thousands of clients I've worked with over the years, and people that have engaged in our community, what we've really learned is that it's definitely not about being something you're not, learning a new skill. It's actually just simply about tapping into what's already inside of you. And I think that's a really important distinction that we all need to understand. So I share that with all of you because I want to make sure that you are clear that when I talk about being an everyday innovator, I'm talking about unlocking your zone of genius in your way. And in fact, let me give you the definition of everyday innovator, like what it means to be an everyday innovator. And this is a definition that, you know, we've curated over here to really put our flag in the ground and say, this is how you can do it. So here's what an everyday innovator is. I want you to think about this and think about how this is something that you can really do. So an everyday innovator is someone that knows how to tap their unique zone of genius, to think differently about what's right in front of them, to create an advantage. So let me say it again. I think it's so important. I'm saying it twice. So an everyday innovator is someone that knows how to tap their unique zone of genius, to think differently about what's right in front of them, to create an advantage. So I want to break it down for a second. And I hope that you're nodding your heads at this. Tell me in the chat bar if you are, because you can tell this is very specific language in the way we put this together. It's someone that knows how to tap their unique zone of genius. So I'm not saying that knows if they have one, or someone who's created one. What I'm saying is they know how to tap it, meaning all of us have this unique zone of genius. But what an everyday innovator understands is how their brain works and how to tap into that to be the most productive, innovative, the best problem solver, strategic thinker, decision maker, right? To be that innovator that they're meant to be. So we all have the zone of genius, and it's unique to each of us, kind of how we work. And what an everyday innovator does is they know how to tap it. And then the second part of this, which is actually our definition of innovation, is thinking differently about what's right in front of you to create an advantage. So thinking differently, right? A different perspective, a different approach about what's right in front of you, your resources, your challenges, your opportunities. It makes it accessible and possible all the time. And then to create an advantage, right? That advantage might be more efficient in how you schedule your day. It might be a product in the market that kills the competition. It might be getting a promotion, getting your voice heard, right? It's whatever that advantage is to you. But again, that definition, just to be clear, is an everyday innovator, is someone that knows how to tap their unique zone of genius to think differently about what's right in front of them to create an advantage. And I can tell by the yeses in the chat bar that that's speaking to you, which I'm excited to hear because again, it's in all of us. It's just a matter of unlocking it. Now, with that comes sets of behaviors that help you tap into it and leverage it every single day. And that's what I want to go through. I want to go through today, the 7 behaviors, things that you can do every day to get more into your zone of genius. And like I said, I think number 4 is going to shock some of you. And number 8 is going to actually make these things that I'm saying easier. So let's dig in. All right. Number 1, I wrote these all in sticky. I love my sticky notes. Number 1 is be observant, right? Observation creates incredible insight and stimulates the mind. And that might sound obvious, but think about the last time you weren't with blinders on, head down, just thinking about whatever it is that's right in front of you. And sometimes you have to do that. But more often than not, we're so in our routines and our habits or in the weeds of whatever it is that we're doing that we just don't take a second to stop and look around us. The other day I was driving home from an appointment, and it's down this relatively busy road, not a highway, but like one of those thoroughfares that kind of acts as the second highway in a city. And I normally am thinking about work, right? I'm thinking about who I need to email. I'm thinking about, all the things that I think about. And I'm not paying attention at all to the stores, the scenery. I'm paying attention to the road. Don't worry. I know where I'm driving. I'm not hitting anyone, but I'm not really paying attention to the environment. And the other day, I just decided, you know what, I'm gonna clear my mind and I'm just gonna look around me. So I did. And I saw stores that I'd never seen before, billboards that I'd never seen before, the cars around me. I noticed the people inside the cars. And by the end of this drive, which is about 40 minutes, I started to have these kind of new and different thoughts about work and life and other things. It sparked whole new ideas in me. Why? Because I was observing the things around. We spend so much time doing, talking, engaging, like just being in our world with our blinders on, that we don't spend enough time observing. And when we observe, we gather new data, and we also spark different connections that we didn't make before. We begin to see things in a different way. Like this road that I was on, I have passed by these same stores probably 100 times. It's my lashes appointment, just to be real. So, right, it's every couple of weeks, and I'm always on this road. Never noticed half the stores, never noticed half the billboards, never noticed the people in the cars around me or where they were going. I didn't even know some of these restaurants. I was like, well, I didn't know that restaurant was here, because I wasn't observing. So again, observing, first of all, makes us very present, because we have to be very present to do it. But also it sparks new thoughts. It gathers new connections for us. And to no surprise, later that day, I solved one of my biggest challenges because I had new thinking, new ideas, new tracks going on in my brain. Something that I saw sparked a new idea. And that thing that I saw, it was actually a statue. And like I said, I've driven by it a million times, never even noticed it. It just wasn't in my brain. Now, here's the thing to understand about your brain when you think about being observant. This is why you have to be intentional and present about it. You can't just hope that it happens. Our brains are, well, they're inherently lazy, but also they're actually the brain is actually trying to block out stimulus because there's too much of it every single day. And if our brains were taking in everything around us, we'd be so overwhelmed from the moment we woke up. So our brains are looking for the things that, first of all, we already know to be true. So validate current beliefs, but also just things that make us hyper efficient. So as I'm driving, really all I'm paying attention to is the car in front of me, the lights, right? Like my distance with the cars. And frankly, most of that's happening on a subconscious operating system level anyway. But I'm not paying attention to everything else around me. I'm actively shutting it out. And that's what we do, right? We go through our day shutting out the world. So being observant, having that observation takes intention and presence. So stop, look around you. Look at when next time you're sitting in a restaurant, look at the restaurant, like look at the walls, look at the artwork, look at the people. You'll be amazed at what you see. But observation, like I said, creates new tracks in the brain, and it sparks new thinking, new ideas, because we're also collecting new data. So number one is be observant. And you got, like I said, you got to be intentional about it. Okay, number one leads to number two, curiosity. So not only do we have to observe what's happening, but we got to be curious about it. But actually, curiosity kind of goes to a whole second level. So let me go big on curiosity. We're humans, and as humans, we jump to solution, to assumption, to conclusion very, very fast, too fast. So instead of stopping and being curious and wondering, I wonder why that person feels the way they feel. I wonder why they have that opinion. I wonder why they did that this morning. I wonder why that restaurant is set up that way. I wonder why that coffee shop closed. I wonder why my pasta didn't taste good last night when I cooked it. Right? We don't spend time to think about those things. And what I've really come to realize as an everyday innovator is half the battle is just being willing to stop and be curious about the frustrations, the challenges, the things that worked, the things that didn't work, why people say what they say. I think oftentimes it's particularly too in human interaction is we shut off our curiosity pretty fast. So someone says something we don't agree with, and we come back trying to convince them why they're wrong and why we're right. Or someone says something we agree with, and we just head nod and like, yeah, we're on the same team. Not even understanding why they believe what they believe, why they said what they said. Why did, my boss make this decision to invest in this? Why did this person over there in the meeting say this? Why did my customer give me, not like this about my product? We're not curious enough. We're not curious about the world enough around us. I mean, why when I'm driving, hold on, let me think of a good one. I'm talking off the cuff, so I'm kind of losing my train of thought on this one. Why when I'm actually, I'll give you a really funny example now that I say that. I have this weird, you guys ever heard of being rickrolled? Does anybody know what that is? Okay, some of you do. So being rickrolled is when you think you're going to watch something or listen to something, and then Rick asks, I've been told it's Astley, even though I call him Ashley from the 80s. You know the song Never Gonna Give You Up? Like one of those. So I won't sing it. My voice is it's so bad. But in my car, for whatever reason, every time I turn on the car and the audio kicks on, that song plays off my phone. I have, for the life of me, no idea why. But you know why I don't know why? Because I haven't actually been curious enough to figure it out. So it's been happening for like 3 months and it drives me bonkers. But I'm like, whatever, I just turn off the radio, or I, then go in and switch out the song or turn it to a podcast. I have not, kind of throwing myself under the bus here, but it's true. I have not been curious enough to find out why that keeps happening. Like what in my phone, the way I've set it up, or how that phone, does that happen? Now, here's the thing. This is why I share this story, because it's actually really funny. And at first I thought a family member did it to me. Like maybe they set me up as a Rickroll every day, because we have done it to each other. But why does Rick Astley come on every single time? Like, come on, Rick Astley. Actually, Rick Astley. I'm going to remember how to say his last name right. So I just haven't bothered to find out why. And guess what? I've had this problem over and over again. It's been months every time I get in my car, and I get in my car almost every day. So, but because I haven't been curious, I haven't bothered to go, I wonder why this was happening, which would then lead to what is the next, by the way, step of becoming an everyday innovator, which is problem solving. Because I'm pretty sure that if I just took a moment to be curious, I'd probably be able to figure it out and probably be able to stop it. But no, I'm too busy. I'm too in a hurry. I'm too other things on my mind. I've got these stop gaps of just turning off the radio or turning on a podcast. So I never solve the problem. It just keeps coming back because I'm not curious enough to figure it out. So that's where curiosity as being an everyday innovator is really important. Why does this keep happening? Why does this person believe what they believe? Why was this decision made? Why does this happen? Like, why is this, checking into this hotel so inefficient? Like, why? Right? Why is so important. And we just don't spend enough time following our whys. So curiosity and being an everyday innovator. Now, how your brain works is how your brain works. So how you're going to think about that's going to be different from you than me, but the why matters. We've got to be curious. Okay, so I said that my Rick Astley, I'm going to get it right. That story, when I share that, kind of what I was sharing is, it leads to the next one, which is problem solving. This is number 3. How many times has something been frustrating, annoying? Just you see, and you're like, this is just not as good as it could be. And you don't do anything about it, right? We shrug and we move on. Well, part of being a really strong everyday innovator is just being really good at solving problems. Now, here's how I like to do it. I like to do what's in psychology, this is called priming. And what priming really means is you kind of, as it says, train your brain to be really good at something. So when you need it, it's accessible to you, right? Your brain has the ability to do it. So with problem solving, the way I think of it is I like to think about how to make things better, how to improve them, how to change them, how to solve problems every single day about everything I interact with, right? I'm first of all, I'm observant, I'm paying attention. Second, I'm curious, except for apparently this Rick Astley issue, but I'm curious, right? Like, why is this the way it is? And third, well, how can I make it better? Right? How do I problem solve? So I will, like, at a restaurant, think about, if they brought the menu over to us with the QR code first, instead of, the water, then we'd order faster. Like, I'm always thinking about how to make it better. I cannot help myself. When I check into at the airport, right? I'm like, how could TSA be more efficient? I have a lot of ideas for you, TSA. So call me. Like, I can't help myself. When I'm cleaning the kitchen, I'm like, well, how could I do this in a way that's super efficient for me? How could I innovate against this product and make it even more meaningful? I'm just constantly priming so that when I need it in my work, in my life, in my business, my brain is good at problem solving. I'm adept at it. I think the challenge we have is we wait to try to solve problems until we have problems. But then we're dusting off the gears in our brain and they're not working. Remember how I said being an everyday innovator is about knowing how to tap your zone of genius. It's not about building it. It is about strengthening it, because once you tap it, you got to exercise it regularly. But it's there and we just have to use it. So we've got to problem solve all the time. So we've got to prime ourselves for problem solving. I will tell you, give me anything, like, here's my water, like this is my Stanley, right? How basic of me. But I will tell you that there's improvements that I would make to the Stanley to make it a little better. Like, I would put a grippy material on this side, because oftentimes, like, this is on the other side, so I'm grabbing it here, but it's actually kind of slippery because of the material it is. Like, there's little things that I would constantly do to make things better. So I'm constantly solving problems. Okay. So that's number 3. So observant, be curious, be a problem solver. Okay. Are you ready for the one that's going to surprise you? This is number 4, which is be efficient. Find ways to make the tasks and the work that you do way more efficient than it is. Now, some of you might be going, well, Tamara, that makes no sense. I thought you're saying I need to be innovative. What does efficiency have to do with innovative? People get really bent out of shape when I talk about part of being an everyday innovator is being efficient, because they see them as diametrically opposed, but they're not. Here's the thing. When you are efficient with the mundane tasks, when you are efficient with the important tasks, you free up your mental space to be more innovative, to be an everyday innovator, and to engage that higher thinking, right? That high performing brain, which is about creative problem solving, strategic thinking, decision making, right? Risk taking, adaptability, resilience, like all of that is inside your zone of genius. And so when we are inefficient, we are expending totally unnecessary amounts of energy on things that waste our time or that don't get us to move the needle the way we want to, okay? When we make those tasks super efficient, we free up our brain. I'm going to give you the example that I think is going to surprise you. Are you ready for it? Okay. I'm going to tell you straight up. When I do my podcasts, here's how I do them, because I got to map out everything I'm going to say. Now, I've been in this business and I am steeped enough in everyday innovator in the brain to be able to really talk about this off the cuff. But I'm also a big fan of planning. So I plan out what I'm, as you can tell, I got my sticky notes. I plan out what I'm going to say. I really think about it. But here's the thing. I got to do that every single week. So if I just sat at my desk and mapped out an entire script, I'd be here for 6 hours. But I can't, right? I got other things to do and other important things to do. So to make myself efficient, here's what I do. I map out an outline of the things that I think are really important to say. Like, here are the 7 steps that I think that we need to become an everyday innovator. Here are the key points to hit. Here are some story ideas. But you know what I do next? I go into ChatGPT and I say, hey, what do you think I'm missing, ChatGPT? What would you add to this? What would you take away? What's a different angle? What do you like about this? And I brainstorm with ChatGPT. I do it all the time. I do it with my Instagram post titles. I do it with everything, right? On Serenity Styles, I do it with the designs that we do. And to be clear, I'm not punting to AI my content. And I don't take anything back that doesn't fit what I believe and the expertise that I have and the voice that I want to have in the world, but I make it efficient. I have ChatGPT help me make my words clearer, more concise. I have it help me fill in the gaps. Like, oh, you talked about this, but you didn't mention this. And I'm like, oh yeah, that is important. Like, I'm so glad you reminded me, because all of us, like, our brains are full of so much. We can't remember it all the time. I use ChatGPT to make me hyper efficient. I use a record app on my phone so that when I have a thought of like, oh, I should talk about this in my next keynote, or I learned a new fact that I think is important to you, I will record it and put it down in my phone and then come back to it later, right? And store it somewhere. If I am working on a keynote, I will videotape myself and then play it back and then have ChatGPT do a transcript and tell me what it liked and it didn't like. Now, it's not always right. You got to put it through your filters, right? But be efficient. Like, there's so many people, I could go off on this. There are so many people that are fighting AI and all these efficiency tools out there. But why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you make your life easier? I heard someone say it best, and I'm going to relate this to all of us. He said, someone asked him, is AI going to make doctors irrelevant, right? Do doctors go out of business if AI can tell you what's wrong with you? And what the guy said, I think, is 100% spot on. He said, no. He said the doctors that don't use AI will become irrelevant. And the doctors that do will continue to provide incredible services. And I think that's true for all of us. So if you're not using AI in some way, or these incredible apps that are out there, or any of these things, go do it. You know, I'm on a nonprofit board, and we have a secretary who's taking notes. And finally, we kind of realized, why are you taking notes when we could just have AI do it, right? There's all these bots or apps or whatever. I don't even know the right language. I don't even care. It just works. But why would we do it when the AI tool could do it? And here's the thing. Think about this for a second. That person on the board, the secretary, was so busy taking notes and recording all of our conversation as she was supposed to, that we're missing her brilliance, because she can't do the notes and be a participant at the same time. None of us can. So in your world, are you missing key brilliance from people because they're so inundated with these mundane tasks that could be, that could be way more efficient? And I think we fight this kind of fear of, oh, wait, hold on. If technology does part of my job for me, what's my role? Like, where do I fit in? How am I valuable? Why am I getting paid if half the bullets on my job description are being, done by AI? Well, you know what? You're way more valuable for your creative mind, for your everyday innovator, your zone of genius, than you are for being able to take notes. That's the reality of it. That's what makes you valuable in today's world. So I think, and I know from my own experience, in order to be a strong everyday innovator, you actually really need to be efficient. Use the tools at hand, because again, not just to make you look smart, but to free up your mental space to think and do the things that really make an impact. Okay, that's number 4. Number 5 is build connections with people and ideas. Okay, so some might call it collaboration. I like to think of it as connections, because I think you want to try to connect the dots. Connecting with people not like you, people with different perspectives. So we all have these different everyday innovator styles. There's 36 power combinations, and there's 252 combinations when you add in the dormant trigger. So you are probably surrounded by people who think differently than you. And we spend so much time trying to build consensus, which is a joke, and trying to be similar and find the things we have in common, that we miss leveraging the things that are actually truly valuable, which is what makes us different. And our brains bring that to the table for us. So you want to connect with people not like you, get a fresh perspective, get a new voice, get some new ideas, get their feedback, be able to explain your thinking to them, right? Those connections really matter. And same with ideas and experiences. So I've shared this many times, probably in this podcast, about how I was trying to figure out this marketing idea for this consulting firm I used to work for. We send like a holiday card to people, right? To our clients. And we didn't want to send the generic holiday card that everybody does. And it was just in the back of my brain percolating this thing I was working on. And I'm in line at the grocery store. This is back when they used to have like hordes of magazines at the checkout line. They rarely do that anymore. And I picked up a magazine for BMX bikes, and it was talking about the lingo that BMX bikers use and kind of how they have this special language that if you're in that world, you get it. But if you're not, it makes no sense. And that connection took me to our world. And I was like, oh, maybe we send out cards with really funny lingo that we all kind of know, or moments that we all know. And that's kind of our holiday card. So we came up with these funny words like that everybody knows. If you say it in our world, in the consulting world, you'll know. Confer vulture. So conference room and vulture put together. So those are the people that sit outside the conference room waiting for it to end and then like rush in to eat the leftover bagels and lunch, because we always order food, right, for meetings. So confer vulture. Bin sanity. That's the behavior people exhibit when fighting for overhead bin space on an airplane, especially business consultants, because we're always carrying our little carry-ons and nothing else. So you get the point, right? Connections lead to new thinking and new ideas. They make you a very strong everyday innovator. And whether you are kind of the way your brain works is the pioneer like me, or the craftsman, or the maverick, or the alchemist, whichever one you are, making those connections will help you spark new thinking. Okay, next up, experimentation. Allowing things to just sit in your brain and live there doesn't help you, and it doesn't help anybody else. We got to get things out of our brain and into the real world. And one of the things that makes strong everyday innovators is you're willing to experiment, try, test things out, fail, but look at that failure as, okay, what worked and what didn't work, and how do I move that forward, right? Being willing to just take this thinking of yours and do something with it. Now, here's the thing that often holds us back. What holds us back is we think we have to be 100% full board in for us to go after it. Right? We have to have the idea fully flushed out. It has to be perfect. We have to have all the money, resources, time, energy we need to make it happen. But that's not what experimentation is all about. Experimentation is about, well, let me just build this with some duct tape and scented markers and see what happens. And then I'll go next and then next, right? Or let me just talk to somebody and get their perspective on this. Or let me just take this out into the world and see what feedback I get. Experimentation is really about the practice of where the rubber meets the road and putting things to work. It is about taking things out of your head. So I think we often don't do that because we're afraid. Well, it's not even that we're afraid. We think we have to have it 100% done before we get there. And that's never how it works. And also, by the way, nothing's ever 100% done in your brain in a way that's going to work. How many of us have ever launched an idea and been like, nailed it out of the gate, never had to change a thing, everything was perfect, nothing went wrong? No, right? It's a circuitous up and down in circles. So you don't even know that unless you're willing to get out there and experiment. So you got to experiment with your thinking. It's really important. Now, I'm going to take this to the fitness world for just 1 second. I was working on an Olympic lift called the snatch. So basically, think about a bar, weights on the end. You've got a wide grip on the bar. You take the bar from the ground all the way overhead, so your arms are kind of like in a V shape. That's how I describe it. And it's not my favorite one because there's a lot of technique. Not my favorite. It's not my best because there's a lot of technique to it, right? There's ankle mobility. You're squatting as you're lifting, because the deeper you can squat as you lift, basically, the heavier you can lift, right? Because you're getting under the bar. Don't worry about the technicalities of this if you don't do it. It doesn't matter. What matters is I was doing a competition, and in this competition was trying to get the heaviest snatch. And I was doing it the way I've always done it. And the coach said to me, Tamara, next time you lift, I want you to think about pulling your arms back, not up. And I was like, okay. And I was like, I don't know about that. This way, I think my issue is strength, not technique. I don't know. But I was like, let me experiment with this. I'm going to try it. So I tried it and was like, oh my gosh, I just lifted more weight this time than last, and it seemed easier because I experimented with it. And then I experimented next time and I did it again, but I did it a little differently. Okay, well, that didn't work as well. I dropped the bar. I didn't get the lift. All right, so next time I'm going to experiment. I'm going to do it this way because I know that works, but I'm going to add this in, and that worked even better. So it's all about experimentation, right? It's one lift at a time. It's one action at a time. That's all it is. But you got to be willing. So in the chat bar, a couple of you put fear, afraid of consequences, afraid of looking stupid. Yes to all that. Exactly. You're right. You're absolutely right. Fear of what others might think, of failure, of looking stupid, of our own kind of letting ourselves down. Fear gets in the way. But you know what is worse than fear? Regret. Regretting never having done something about it. I have a friend who's out there doing some pretty outlandish stuff that kind of looks ridiculous and makes no sense. But you know what? She's freaking out there doing it. And for that, I give her a lot of credit. I don't know that I understand her strategy, but whatever. She's learning and growing as she does it. So you're right. Fear is a big one. So, but like I said, fear is a big one, but regret is much, much worse. Okay. The seventh one, then don't forget, I got a bonus one for you. Persistence. Okay. Persistence is important because you got to keep at it. You got to keep going at it. If you've ever tried to lose weight or gain muscle, you know you don't get to go to the gym once a month or every other month or just think about it, right? You got to be persistent about your efforts. Well, being an everyday innovator is the same way, right? Our brain isn't technically a muscle, but in this way it acts like one. So the more we exercise it, the more persistent we are at unlocking it, the stronger it gets, the easier it gets to unlock that door inside of us to our zone of genius. And the less we do, the dustier it gets, the weaker it gets, the harder it gets. So if you come to me, you say, Tamara, being an everyday innovator is so hard. I know what that means is you haven't been exercising that muscle and you don't know how to access your zone of genius. Persistence. You got to stick at it. You don't get to have one salad and lose 20 pounds, right? You don't have to get to have one protein shake and gain 10 pounds of muscle. Well, you don't get to have one moment where you decide to be a strong everyday innovator and have it work forever. You got to keep exercising. Okay. 7, before I get to the 8th one that makes it easy. Observant. My gosh, tongue-tied. Number 1, observant. Number 2, be curious. Number 3, be a problem solver. Remember, prime that pump. Number 4, be efficient. Use the tools. You'll add more value that way. Number 5, connection. Number 6, experimentation. And number 7, persistence. Okay. Let's get to the number 8 bonus one, which is the one that's going to make it all easier. And it's going to make all those things feel easy. It's going to not feel like you're white knuckling it. And that is to look inside. See, all too often, we try to be strong everyday innovators by mimicking other people out in the world and how they do things. I've had people come up to me and say, Tamara, I've tried to be like you, be bold and daring and experiment with everything because I'm the pioneer. That's my archetype. That's what I do. And then they say, it just didn't work. I don't know what I'm doing wrong. And it's not necessarily that they're doing anything wrong at all, actually. It's actually more that they're just simply not doing it their way. And when I say look inside, what I mean is we all have an everyday innovator archetype, something unique to us, right? How we innovate. Again, whether that's because your power triggers that make up your archetype are experiential and risk-taking like mine, which is the pioneer, or futuristic and imaginary, which is the visionary archetype. But you can imagine the visionary who's futuristic and imaginative, right? Futuristics are all about today's problems is tomorrow's opportunity, forest through the trees. Imaginative is all about playing in the gaps where nothing exists, right? Novel. So that person creates forward and novel thinking. I am more tangible and bold thinking. Tangible, bold, forward and novel. Totally different, right? I could go on. There's like I said, there's a lot of them. So how you innovate, your everyday innovator style is unique to you, which is why I say look inside. Yeah, let me put that link in the thing for you. Hold on YouTube. There you go. There's a link to take the assessment. So thank you for asking that. So we got to look inside us, figure out how we become high performers, and then go do that with intention every single day. When we do that, that curiosity, that observation, that persistence, that efficiency, right? That becomes easier because we're doing it in a way that works for us and that actually speaks to our strengths. And there's a dormant trigger, so we understand how to avoid the traps that sabotage our efforts. Can't tell you the number of times I talk to people and they're playing directly to their dormant trigger. And it's like, no wonder life feels hard and exhausting and overwhelming. They're playing to the thing that they're weak at. Maybe they're trying to improve that. Here's the deal. I'm not a fan of playing to your weakness or your dormant trigger. That's your area of least play. I'm a fan of playing to your power triggers, right? That's your source of strength, your zone of genius. your wellspring of innovative ideas. Why wouldn't we play to that? You don't want your dormant to sabotage you, but you shouldn't be trying to improve that. It's energy wasted. I think of it this way. So you have two power triggers, right? And one dormant trigger that come together. Your power triggers are your wellspring, right? Your zone of genius. I think of them as the tailwinds, right? They're the winds that push you forward, give you momentum, where the dormant trigger is actually your headwind. It causes resistance. It causes you to have to expend more energy and still not go very fast. So I was one time training for triathlon. I was biking and I had this really bad headwind and I was going downhill at the same time that my husband was going uphill. Okay. So we were on the same road, opposite directions. He was going faster uphill with less effort because he had the tailwind pushing him forward than I was going downhill. I should have been flying past him, but I had the headwind, right? So we got to think about how do we leverage the tailwinds and how do we minimize and get ready for the headwinds, but not let them sabotage us. So when we think about the 7 steps to becoming a strong everyday innovator, I want to go back to the beginning for a second because we're almost done here. Number 1 is, remember, being an everyday innovator is about knowing how to tap your unique zone of genius, to think differently about what's right in front of you to create an advantage, because we all have that zone of genius inside of us. It just looks different for each of us. That's what the research and the neuroscience shows us. So it really is about that. And then it's about leveraging these 7 steps that I just covered, about being observant and curious and efficient and persistent, all those things, to drive it every single day. I like to think of it as it's like going to the gym of innovators. And if we go every day, we practice with intention, we become very strong at this. If we don't practice and we just show up to the gym of innovators once a month, like in the 3 p.m. brainstorm on Thursdays, or the one moment we have a problem in our business, right, that we're trying to launch, it's no wonder it's hard and exhausting. We think it's not for me because we haven't been going to the gym. We're not primed. We're not ready. We haven't been strong in this area. We don't go to the gym and expect to run 10 miles on the treadmill and bench press 200 pounds when we haven't gone in 3 months. Well, we can't expect to be this high-performing innovator if we're not practicing every single day. So if you're coming in late to this podcast, I would really encourage you to back up and watch the 7 steps that we just talked about. They're really important, and especially that 8th one that makes it easy, which is knowing your unique everyday innovator archetype, because how you do it is unique to you. It's not about learning a new skill. It's not about, being something that you're not. It really is about uncovering what's strong about you and how to tap your zone of genius and the way you operate. It's a look inside. All right, everybody. Thank you. Oh, last reminder, next Monday, this coming Monday, oh my gosh, is the Everyday Innovators 5-day challenge. So barriers to breakthroughs. So you bring the problem or the goal that you really want to work on, the thing that's like you're stuck on or maybe can't see clearly. And I'm going to take you through a personalized, based on your archetype, journey for 5 days where we go from those barriers to breakthroughs. So we're going to take that problem or that goal and we're going to create a wealth of innovative and meaningful ideas. So if you click that link there, you can find it on the website, take the assessment, know your archetype, get into the 5-day challenge this month. It doesn't happen every week, because I promise you that you're going to see how you can solve anything and everything that comes your way. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me. Hey, if you have any questions or if you want to say hi, put it in the chat bar on YouTube. That's where we're going live. I love to see them. Hopefully I can see them on my platform. I got one question in that I want to answer. I love it when you ask questions. Here's why, by the way, because people always go, Tamara, why do you always ask your audience for questions? You're putting them on the spot. Maybe, but here's the thing. Your brilliance is just as important to this conversation as mine. And if you have a question, that means somebody else probably has the question. So you asking it helps everybody. And on top of that, not only does your question help everybody else, but your insight, your aha also helps everybody else. Okay, so let me end the question. The question is, can you give me some examples of experimentation and how to do that in my everyday life? I have an idea that I really want to launch, but I really don't have any resources, but I really want to test it. Okay. I have spent years doing this. So I'm so glad you asked that question. Years testing ideas. And I will tell you that 90% of them, I experimented, and it's the reason why I didn't go forward with it. So here's what you do. It's so simple. Take literally what you have in front of you. I don't care if it's duct tape, some scented markers, some pens, some sticky notes. And if it's a product, I want you to build the ugliest, roughest prototype you've ever seen. And I want you to then go show it to people, explain a little bit about what it is, and then listen without judgment on what they say back. Here's the thing. Don't be afraid to show them the rough draft. The rougher your idea is, the way you put it out there, the more honest feedback you'll get. I used to find this so I used to do focus groups a lot. I'm not a fan of them. It's a whole nother soapbox. But I used to do a lot of them because I used to do a lot of new product development for General Mills, Procter & Gamble, Clorox, right, all those companies. And we'd take these beautiful renderings of the products to customers, and they'd be like, I like it or I hate it. Why? Because it's so final what we were handing them that it felt like there was no room for conversation, no room for feedback. So now what I've learned is I am better off taking a piece of, here's my idea for this brand new pen, right? And looking at it this way and giving it to people than I am giving them something beautifully rendered, because people will respond to this and they will help you make it better. And if they don't like it, you'll know that too. But I'm all about the ugliest, roughest thing you can possibly do. And if it's not something you can build, maybe it's a service, build a one-page marketing that, like, if you were to go to a client, this is what you do. I did that when I launched a consulting business years ago. I made a marketing one-pager. It was a mock-up. And I went to clients or past clients and said, I want your advice. Would you buy this? I wasn't asking them for money. It wasn't sales. I literally was like, give me your advice. They helped me refine my offering so that when it was time to really go out there, I had something people wanted to buy. But because I said, this is rough, I even had, like, the design was kind of ugly because I didn't want them to feel like it was final. So the rougher, the better. Does that help you? A ton. Good. I'm glad to hear that. Okay. The other question I just got in, I love your questions. Thank you. Is, can you talk a little bit about how to overcome fear? I'm trying to be fearless, but it's hard. Oh my gosh. I love your language in that. Thank you. Okay. So first of all, stop putting the pressure on yourself to be fearless. There's no such thing. Fear is hardwired into the human design for a reason, because if, in the caveman days, if there was a rustle in the bushes, could have been a saber-toothed tiger coming at you. So you needed to be able to respond quickly, right? If there's a shadow in the alley as you're walking down the street, you need to register that. If someone's, like, coming at you aggressively, like, fear is hardwired into us. So don't ever expect. The challenge is, in modern times, it plays tricks on us. So I'm not going to ask you to be fearless. Take the pressure off. That's one of the things that hold us back. I don't want you to be fearless. What I want you to do is push through and harness that fear, right? To move you forward. And the thing to remember about fear is that's very personal and it's very real. So, you might be feeling fear because you're afraid of looking stupid. You might be feeling fear because you're afraid of the consequences. You might be feeling fear because you're afraid you're going to become irrelevant if you don't do it. There's a million reasons, right? You could probably come up with your own personal reasons as to why you're feeling fear in anything. So here's what I want you to do. There's two things. We can have a whole podcast on this too. So the first thing I want you to do is I want you to take a moment and go, what am I really afraid of? Like, ask your primal brain, what am I really afraid of? So your primal brain's there to keep you safe and comfortable, right? And warm. And it actually works against you because it's keeping you from getting to that higher function. And it's keeping you from moving forward. So I want you to first just have a real conversation with yourself. Like, all right, I call my primal brain Bernard. Actually naming it creates cognitive dissonance a little bit. So you actually want to name it because it makes it so it's not in the driver's seat, it's in the passenger seat. This whole research behind this. So I want you to name it. And I want you to be like, what am I really afraid of here, Bernard? Like, what is really going on? And you'll realize, and I have these conversations with myself all the time, you'll realize, oh, I'm afraid that if I say this in the meeting, I'll look stupid and they'll think I'm dumb because obviously someone here has probably thought of that. Or, oh, if I do this and it doesn't work, my neighbors will know I tried to be an entrepreneur and I failed. And what you kind of realize as you do that is, like, it's not as bad as you think it is, number one. And I think we all intellectually know nobody's really judging us. Everybody's too wrapped up in their own shit to worry about any of us. Number one. Yes, Eugene, I do. So hit me up on LinkedIn. Sometimes I do. Depends on if it's the right fit. but hit me up on LinkedIn and we can talk about that. Thank you for asking. So I wanted to make sure I got to that before we end. So you find though that like while intellectually we know it's silly to care what other people think, our bodies and our brains still care, right? We're tribal. Of course we care. But when you start to think about it, right, it's not that big of a deal. You know the number of times I failed? Oh my God, so many times. It's the only reason I'm successful is because first I failed. And also, by the way, here's what else I found out. Nobody judged me. They were impressed that I tried. They were jealous that they didn't go after their thing. Remember I said earlier that regret's probably the worst thing. Like fear is bad, but regret is worse. So that leads me to the second thing I would say to answer this, which is I would say, well, what happens if it works? We spend so much time worrying about what happens if it doesn't work that we don't spend the time thinking about, well, what happens if it works? That's pretty exciting. I find that pull of what happens if it works is more magnetic than that pull back of what happens if I fail, if we spend the time to think about it, right? And really map it out. So I hope that helps you because fear is a tricky beast and it plays a lot of games with us. And I think the thing we have to remember, like I said, is that fear is very personal and very real. And when we're becoming strong, everyday innovators, like all of us have the ability to be, we have to remember that fear is a part of that equation. It's never going to go away. It's part of it. And in the businesses that I've built and, building the assessment, I've always had fear in there. There's always been something that I'm afraid of. What if it doesn't work? What if I'm wrong? What if this is a stupid idea? The list goes on, right? What if this kills my business and I can't pay my bills? Like I could go on and on and on and on. But I don't think that when I think about what's work. When we're strong, everyday innovators, we're willing to push forward and push through. That's how we get the breakthroughs. That's how we get to those meaningful innovations and solutions that really push us further, faster. All right, everybody, we are out of time. Thank you for joining me. Hey, I love it that you watch on YouTube. Thank you. Thank you. And don't forget to subscribe on iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, wherever you listen, because that's where we put it out the next day. So it's a great place to be with us even more. All right. See you later. Tamara out. Oh.